going live on YouTube. 1 second.
Oh, great. Okay.
All right. That is now live. So you are good.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cody. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Harkey, and it is a pleasure to be chairing tonight's meeting. This is our first land use and waterfront committee meeting since the summer, and my first as appointed chair of this committee. I'd also like to thank my co-chair, Sandy McKee, for all of her work in preparation for tonight. And I'd also like to thank Sandro Sherrod, who will be joining us later this evening, for his work as chair over the last 2 years, let alone the last 6 months or so chairing this committee and his important work with NYU Langone. The 6 months have been very challenging for us all. And as our city stands on the edge of uncertainty, I wish all of those in attendance, your loved ones and acquaintances, good health and the highest of spirits. With that said, we return to an axiom of CB6, a packed land use agenda and a packed house, albeit on Zoom. For those watching out in Zoom land, thank you for joining. And so with that, I will begin the meeting with our script. Okay, sorry about this. Whoops, wrong document. Okay. Welcome all to the September 29th, 2020 meeting of the CB6 Land Use and Waterfront Committee. My name is Adam Harkey, which I already stated, and tonight we are joined by Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman. For members of the public, you can raise your hand. You can raise questions, you can raise questions or comments that you have during the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. I believe Jim has volunteered to take minutes tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct. I just don't see that he's joined the meeting yet.
Okay.
So
well, luckily he can watch the recording if need be, right? And so with that, this serves as a perfect segue to take attendance. Cody, if you can begin the roll call, that would be great, please.
Okay, committee members, I'll call your name. You can unmute yourself when your name is called. Just please say present, and I'll announce if there is quorum. Jim Collins. Jim. Adam Harkey.
Present.
Kavitha Matthew. Oh, Kavitha said she couldn't make it tonight. Sandy McKee. Wells Magali.
Present.
Jean Santoro.
He was here. I saw him.
Jean. Yeah. Jean. Larry Shire.
Present.
Ann Seligman.
Here.
Lou Sapersky.
Here.
Great. Sandro Sherrod.
He'll be joining us later.
Okay. Letty Simon. Did Letty join? And Kathy Thompson.
I'm here. It's Letty. I'm here.
Hi, Letty. All right.
Kathy's
With Letty and Kathy, you're at 9 members, which is a quorum.
Wonderful. Just the line, the way we like it. Okay. And so with that, the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. Thank you, Cody. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand via the Zoom. If no one objects. Okay, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the June 22nd meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, raise your hand in Zoom. Okay. All right. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the 22nd are adopted. Okay. All right. So with that said, I'd like to set some ground rules for this meeting. Many of us, this is not our first Zoom rodeo. So thank you to the board office for honing their fine craft in orchestrating and monitoring and conducting these large meetings. And so with that said, we're going to hear from about 4 or so different presentations this evening. Basically, after each presentation, we will then open up to the committee members who will have a chance to discuss, ask questions, etc. And then if there's time remaining, we will field questions that were brought up in the Q&A function box. If Cody, would you mind giving a brief example of how to use the Q&A box?
Sure. So all members of the public can open the Q&A box and submit their question. And as Adam said, he and Sandy, the vice chair of this committee, will be reviewing the questions, and depending on how we do with time, number of questions will be read aloud and then hopefully answered by our presenters. If there are any questions that don't get answered, for the sake of time, please email the board office at help@cbsix.org. It's CB like community board, 6, the number spelled out, .org, and we'll try to answer your question then.
Thank you, Cody. In addition to emailing the board office, many of the presenters tonight will give you direct sort of contact, which you can reach them afterwards to get more information. All right, with that said, let's jump into the agenda. The first project on tonight's agenda is the Grand Central Train Shed Rehabilitation Project. So this project is adjacent to CB6. It's in CB5, but it's a community asset that a lot of us use, and is played a very big role in our recent work within the Midtown East rezoning. And so with that, we've asked them to do a very brief update, a broad conceptual overview of the project as a whole, some of the immediate community impacts, and the broader construction schedule. Since we have a pretty packed agenda, we're going to limit this to about 10 or 15 minutes. And if you have any questions afterwards, they'll provide their contact information. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Leslie Black and her team for the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. And I'd like to introduce Mike Feinberg from Metro North. Mike.
Thank you. My name is Michael Feinberg. I'm director of Tunnels, Bridges, and Track which is a structural engineering department in the capital engineering department of MTA Metro North Railroad. We're now part of the construction and development group. I'm accompanied by, in Metro North, Tanya Kokorina, who's the project manager for the department, Mark Mannix, senior director for community affairs, among other things, and Ziona Rubin, who's the vice president of our department. And the presentation will be given by Ms. Black and by also Sean Daly of the firm of HNTB. Sean,
Great.
please take
Thanks,
away.
Mike. Great, thank you. Next slide, please. Just to give you an overview of our presentation, we will be explaining the project to you, which we have Sector 1 and Sector 2, as well as priority repairs. We'll be discussing the Park Avenue malls, the project schedule, as well as construction mitigation elements. So now I'd like, next slide, please, and introduce Ali Martori from HNTB.
Thanks, Leslie. So the Grand Central Terminal Train Shed is the underground rail yard north of Grand Central. It starts at 43rd and stretches from Madison to Lexington and north up to East 50th Street, where it tapers down and continues to East 57th. Next slide. So here you can see a typical view with Park Avenue above ground and the train shed just below our feet. Next slide. So the train shed is Metro North's most important asset, as nearly all the trains on the system either start or end there. And this program seeks to restore the waterproofing membrane, which is essential to protecting this very important asset. Next slide. So here we just have some quick facts. Grand Central is the world's largest train terminal at 30 acres. Over 750,000 people pass through every day, and 1 acre of Park Avenue malls sits on top. Next slide. And now I'll pass it over to project manager Sean Daly.
Thank you, Ali. So as you can see here, some pretty gory pictures, as Ali mentioned, that the membrane, the waterproofing membrane has failed, which has led to some serious corrosion and defects that we have to repair on a regular basis. Next slide, please. Again, just some more pictures of some of the repairs that we've done recently and just showing the extent of how corroded the steel has become. Next slide, please. Here you can see rather clearly, I think the screen is showing on the right in 2012, the degree of how many defects have occurred, even though we have been on a regular basis, 5-year interval, performing individual priority repairs. We simply cannot keep up with the rate, and we needed to take a more aggressive approach, which led to the program we're currently under. Next slide, please. Here you can quickly see just a layout showing where we are in relation to Community Board number 6 and all the cross streets that will be affected going into Community Board number 6 area when we physically do the work. You can see right now, Sector 1 is identified in Sector 2. Sector 1 is at 47th and 48th Street, so there will be some disruption to traffic that will affect the Community Board number 6 location. Next slide, please. Here's just a blow up of looking in at the work limits of the Sector 1 area. You'll see that the Sector 1 work area only goes halfway across the train shed. It is intended to be done in conjunction with the 270 Park Avenue redevelopment project. Next slide, please. Here you can see a cutaway, a 3D rendering. And as mentioned earlier, where the train shed is right below our feet. So when we have to do our reconstruction, that means we don't have large excavations to perform or underpinning of buildings, which unlike the 2nd Avenue subway. So we anticipate maximizing efficiency when we're physically working in the street and sidewalk area. Here you can see a quick section cut through the Sector 1 area. You can see that we have 2 levels of the train shed at this location, and the highlighted portions where we will be removing the street, the deck, the sidewalks, and the steel structure that supports the Park Avenue and side streets. Next slide, please. Here you can see a cutaway, just a blow up of the Sector 2 location from 53rd Street through 55th Street to give you a sense of where that is located. Next slide, please. Again, here's a cutaway that shows how close we are to the train shed. And it is worth noting at the center of the screen there, that's track F, where the trains start their descent down to the lower level at this location. Here you can see a section going through the Sector 2 area. And as you can see from the highlighted areas, the work that we do here in Sector 2 will be able to be performed from one side of the house all the way to the other. So whatever betterments that we provide through utility services will be able to clear all the way across the house in this sector construction. Next slide. Here is an area where we show some of our priority repair work. This is one of the bigger individual deficiencies that we have and we are working on now, and we're making fine progress. You can actually go out and see the limits of the work right now that's being performed. Now you just see, for instance, where we're showing how we have to do staging and phasing to allow construction to occur and allow for pedestrian and vehicular traffic to flow while we do this work. So this is a small model of what we are proposing when we do our large sector work, but the principle is the same, that we will be diverting traffic, vehicular and pedestrian, while we get access to a location and perform our work. Next slide, please. Here you can see some of the work that's being performed currently in conjunction with our priority repairs, which is being performed at night and weekends. Here you can see just a larger view of the Park Avenue malls. We are currently working with New York City DOT and the Mayor's Office Capital Project Development Team. And I understand the DOT is on the call tonight and can also answer any questions that anyone may have. We are working now with the Sector 1 design team to provide the infrastructure needed to the new malls, which include electric feeds as well as new water feeds. And we are working with the Sector 1 designer now, as well as DOT and the mayor's office to finalize that footprint of the final malls. Here you can see an org chart of the different projects that are currently on in the program. You can see Sector 1 that we're working directly with JP Morgan Chase, the owner of 270 Park Avenue, and they have hired the third-party designer for the Sector 1 viaduct work. You could see Sector 2 is currently under phase 1 design, which will be brought out to a 60% design, and then it'll transfer to a design build approach, and that will occur in our next capital program starting in 2025. And then you can see the priority repairs number 3, priority repairs that are, it's program number 6 we're in right now, and they're presently ongoing. You can see that HNTB is coordinating with all these parties, the players who are performing the designs, as well as the owner, Metro North Railroad, and we are dealing with all state government officials, as you can see here. Next slide, please. And then just an expansion of those individual entities that we're working with. And we have been meeting with all of these and continue currently, and will be meeting with all of these third-party stakeholders throughout the life of the program. And we look to get input from the very organizations that we are impacting so that we can continue to coordinate and provide maximum efficiency while we rebuild our train shed roof structure. Next slide, please. Here you can see just a brief overview of the next several years. You can see priority repairs number 6 currently ongoing and will go through the remainder of 2021. The Sector 1 design, we're nearly complete. We will be starting our construction of Sector 1 design sometime in 2021. It's worth noting that the construction of Sector 1 has been broken down into 2 phases, Phase A and B. Phase A is designed to do all of the work below grade to the girders and columns that support the actual viaduct roof structure. The intent here is to do as much work as possible subgrade, so that when we get above grade onto the street and the sidewalks, we are minimizing the amount of time we will need to perform that work, which has a greater impact on the community. Sector 2, you can see we are in phase 1 design, which will bring out to 60%. We will then wait till the next capital program in 2025 and start our phase 2 design build approach to Sector 2. Again, you can see the outreach activities, the elected officials we're dealing with on a regular basis, all stakeholders, and we're currently developing a website, and I think Leslie will speak a little more to that in a couple of minutes. Next slide, please. And here I'd like to pass it back to Leslie to complete our presentation.
Great, thanks, Sean. I'd just like to go over briefly with you for the train shed construction recommended mitigation elements. Next slide, please. So with respect to community outreach and coordination, we will be, as Sean noted in the schedule, coordinating different outreach meetings and events throughout the design and construction with regular notifications and fact sheets. We have a project email contact. We'll provide that at the end of the presentation. And we currently have a website under development. And we'll share that address with CD6 as soon as it's up and available. You can see our pop-up events and our public information gallery in-person events are shaded at this point in time as we're on hold due to COVID-19, but we do plan to return out to the community to provide regular updates when possible. In the meantime, we will provide updates virtually as we're doing this evening with this meeting. Next slide, please. So we wanted to give you an update as you pass through this area of some of the elements that we are looking to with respect to public access. For example, sidewalks and buildings will remain accessible when feasible, and temporary sidewalks and overhead protections are in place. These are dynamic structures that will move around the site with as the work progresses. Delivery access to buildings will be maintained whenever possible, with nighttime shutdowns and switchovers coordinated with the building and area stakeholders. You'll notice as you pass through the area signage for wayfinding plans to be developed so that people get assistance with moving around the construction area. And the timing of the work is scheduled for nighttime, typically during nights and weekends, with daytime work only performed with special permissions so that we can keep disruptions to a minimum. Next slide, please. How do we reduce disruptions? We look at all of the elements that people may be concerned about. Certainly with respect to dust mitigation, we will be in compliance with New York City code, as well as with noise mitigation as well. We will have site safety plans in place for both construction health and safety, and also incorporating safety rules and COVID guidelines. Construction equipment such as cranes and concrete trucks and other deliveries will be situated on side streets that are adjacent to the work areas. Next slide, please. And as Sean mentioned, we have ongoing coordination with with many stakeholders, both utility and non-utility stakeholders to inform the process, including working with agencies to ensure infrastructure advancements are in line with neighborhood zoning, and also building owner coordination for the various elements that come into play with the buildings. Next slide, please. Site restoration is very important, as we know, to area stakeholders, and Metro North is actively coordinating with building owners and key stakeholders to deliver in-kind or enhanced site restoration with respect to the various site elements, including sidewalk finishes and landscape, street furniture, roadways and curbs, crosswalks, striping, pedestrian crossing signals, as well as lighting and signage. Next slide, please. And just want to wrap this up to give you our contact information with info@gcttrainshed.com. And as mentioned previously, the website information will be forthcoming. So I'll turn it, we'd like to open it up to discussion at this point in time, if time permits, Adam.
Yeah, actually, I believe we have a time for one question. But
Okay.
you, thank you very much. And I hope for those part of your DOT team, I hope that you can sort of, as you're envisioning this, that you can make Park Avenue more like a park as you sort of go forward with your plans. All right. I see that Anne has her hand raised. Anne, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm not sure this question is worthy of being like the one question, and it's sort of feedback as much as anything. But I feel like this is a very interesting proposal. I am sure the work needs to be done, and I am all in favor. In fact, my virtual background is now this area before Grand Central. But I have to say, I come out of this presentation without a really clear idea of what's going to happen. Are streets actually going to be closed? You talk about pedestrians, and building access, but I feel like you could give us a little bit more information about, okay, this is exactly what we're going to do, during this period. So.
Yes, I understand. It's a great question. Right now, if you refer to the Sector 1 layout, it's a rather large area. And what we are now doing is working with the JP Morgan Chase and their staging for them to do their redevelopment. So as we start to finalize the actual staging, because we're not going to be taking the entire viaduct roof structure off at one point in time. We have to do this in such a way that will allow us to do it efficiently, take a significant piece out of circulation, divert traffic temporarily while we reconstruct that portion of the viaduct, reconstruct it, put it back into service, and then take another piece out. All of this has to be coordinated and approved with New York City DOT. That is currently being finalized for Sector 1, which we'll be able to dice up into several smaller sections and get approvals to temporarily move traffic. And we will be happy to share that information once it becomes finalized.
All right, Larry, and then we have a question from the public, and then we're going to go ahead and move the agenda.
Yes, I'm interested in what happens on the Center Mall, and also if there will be any bike infrastructure created when you return this avenue to service. On the Central Mall, you have plantings there presently. On the diagram, you showed drainage and a variety of other pieces of the infrastructure currently. What's it going to look like compared to now when you're done waterproofing that area?
Right now, we're working closely with DOT on that final layout, and we're concentrating our efforts to make certain that the viaduct is built and then the mall can be reconstructed on top. I'd like to ask Jennifer if she's available to maybe answer the next part of that question regarding the final layout for the mall.
Sure, of course. Thank you, Sean. Thanks, Adam, for having us. And Larry, good evening. I'm Jennifer Santinez. I'm the Manhattan Deputy Borough Commissioner with the New York City Department of Transportation. As Sean and Leslie mentioned earlier, the design team has been working extremely closely with the city team over the last few months on this complex, very high profile project. DOT has been developing a public portal that we're looking to launch soon, and looking forward to circling back with the stakeholders and the community boards, hopefully in short order, to hear what folks would really like to see as the malls come back online. So whether that includes pedestrian, cycling, landscaping enhancements, that's what we're hoping to gather from the stakeholders here.
Great, that sounds great. I think we'll have a lot of input once that time comes. And so we have Larry asked the first question of the public comment, and so I'll ask the second, sort of the most pressing, like, will this affect the train schedules? Will this bear any impact on the M&R train schedules?
We are trying to coordinate the work so that it will have minimal impact on trains passing beneath the work zones.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us and informing us on this. We look forward to seeing the project progress, and we look forward to hearing more from your team soon and via the internet. Again, if anybody here wants to find out more information, their email is listed here. I believe this presentation will later be put on the CB6 website, and you can always email the CB6 office directly, which Cody will be repeating the email many times this evening. So thank you very much, team. All right. So we're going to move forward.
Thank you, Adam and Cody. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move forward to the next item in the agenda, and it's an update from the Economic Development Corporation on the Midtown East Greenway project. Before we begin, again, we are going to hear from EDC regarding this project update. After their presentation, we're going to turn it over to our committee meeting. We will discuss, ask questions, etc. And then if time allows, we will be asking questions from the Q&A. We do ask that all questions and comments please be orderly. And if they're not addressed tonight, EDC will post their information and CB6 will post theirs. For members of the, Cody, can you give us a refresher on how to raise your hand? I can't see it. I can't find it on mine. Just for the committee, so we can kind of keep this, we can keep it orderly for the next agenda items.
Sure. You and Sandy can't raise your hands because you're
right.
Chairing the meeting.
Hold all the power.
You're above hand raising.
Right.
But for all of the other panelists, you can go into the participants tab, and then you'll be able to click the raise hand icon there to raise your hand and indicate that you would like the floor. And if you're having some sort of technical difficulty, you can also use the chat function to kind of alert us that you're trying to raise your hand, something's going wrong. But again, please don't use the chat for committee business.
Excellent. With that, I'd like to turn over to the EDC team for updates. Thank you.
Good evening, Adam, and everybody else on the committee. It's nice to see everyone. It's been we last spoke, but Adam, welcome as chair. It's exciting. Glad to have you. And for everyone else here, thank you for joining us. Like Adam said, I hope everybody is healthy and safe as we, continue through the sort of wild summer that's been. I'm here. My name is Will Fisher from the Economic Development Corporation. I am on the Government and Community Relations team. So I'm sort of the main liaison to community boards and elected officials for Lower and Midtown Manhattan. I'm joined here by Catherine Probilski from EDC's Capital Construction team, as well as Rob Reed from Skanska, who was the project manager for the East Midtown Greenway project. So Catherine is going to share her screen here momentarily, but we're really looking forward to giving you all an update. Actually, Catherine, would you mind just sharing it for so that that first slide is up while I give a brief introduction? Great. Okay. So thank you, Catherine. So yeah. So as Adam said, we are here to give updates on the East Midtown Greenway project, which ties into Andrew Haswell Green. This is a really exciting project. I'm sure most folks in the room here tonight are familiar with this. As you know, we're going to be linking via an elevated waterfront esplanade, 53rd Street and 62nd Street beneath the Queensboro Bridge between Community Board 6 and 8. There's been a lot of work and a lot of engagement that's gone into this project. So we're really excited to be here this evening to give you an update on that. Generally, I would like to give a quick update sort of on the state of broadly on capital projects citywide, at least under the EDC portfolio. So as folks here know, most likely because of COVID, the governor issued an executive order that paused all non-essential construction work, including this project, which we began after a groundbreaking last November 2019 we began. So construction was unfortunately forced to pause due to COVID. During in the lead up to the city budget process, so the budget passes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, as you all know, there has been an exercise going on with OMB and City Hall to determine which projects from a cash flow perspective can come back online. So it was not necessarily a given that this or any other project that was paused due to the COVID crisis and the resulting fiscal situation that we're in right now. There was never a guarantee that these projects would come back online. So generally, I just want to sort of give that caveat. Fortunately, we are able to move forward with this project at this time, but we didn't receive that authorization until probably about just a month ago or so. In working with City Hall and OMB, in terms of getting getting existing projects greenlit, in terms of being able to start again. One thing that was very significant about this project was that we were already in construction. It's quite a lot easier to continue a project where the contractor is mobilized and moving than to begin a new project. So, there are other projects in this district and elsewhere throughout the city that we haven't been able to move forward on. Unfortunately, we hope to do that as soon as we can. But regarding this project, we did receive the green light from OMB about a month ago. So thankfully, we're able to get back to work here with about a 6-month delay in what was the original schedule that we presented last. So I believe the last update that I gave to the community board was that we could not move forward on the project. So good news at the very least that we are able to move here, and looking forward to giving you all the full update. So with that, I'll turn it over to Catherine. And again, we also have Rob from Skanska, the construction manager, to fill in any details regarding what folks are going to see over the next couple of months.
Will, thank you for the intro. Before you go further in your presentation, I've been told that the presentation is hard to see on YouTube. Could you please zoom in so there's a better resolution, if that's possible?
Sure. I mean, I would. It's full screen on my screen, so I don't know how to make it any larger for your screen. Unfortunately. Let me try one thing though, real quick.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me.
Great. And we'll also post this on our website as soon as we finish today.
I apologize. I don't have a mechanism to make it any bigger.
It kind of looks like you're in edit mode rather than display mode. I'm not sure how you change this.
Yeah, I'm not in Adobe here. I made it a little bigger there. I'm not in Adobe. I'm in a different Adobe type program. If you want, let me open it separately in Adobe and not in this, and see if that makes it better. Hold on. Let me just look it on my screen.
Thank you for your accommodation.
No. I totally don't mind. Let me just see if this works.
Yeah, I recognize the Adobe stuff. And I sort of got flashbacks or trauma, if you will, from grad school of late nights in the computer lab.
Yeah, let me, I'm gonna unshare, I'm gonna unshare and then reshare in Adobe and see if I can make it like a fuller screen. Just a second.
Thank you.
So hopefully that makes it a little better.
I think so. I think that works.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you,
good.
Dr.
Lesson learned, use Adobe full view on Zoom/YouTube. Great. So yeah, oh boy. Okay. And it seems to be fitting on the screen a little differently, but okay. So this was the overview that Will just mentioned. This includes the area further to the north is the area that we're talking about from 53rd to 61st Street that is currently, excuse me, in construction. The area to the south is part of a larger vision of the city for closing the gap along in the full Manhattan Greenway. So this project here, previously when we presented this project, it was only East Midtown Greenway. We had another team from EDC that was working on Andrew Haswell Green, and we were working in coordination. Now at this point, these two projects will be built concurrently, so we present them together. Andrew Haswell Green Phase 2B at the north, obviously is in CB8, and that's a project with a long vision as well. So this diagram here indicates the design of the Greenway, Esplanade Greenway, from the Alice Aycock Pavilion there at 60th Street South to the end at 53rd Street, and then the pedestrian bridge that will cross the FDR Drive at Clara Coffee at East 54th Street. We've presented the detailed design before to this community board. Those decks are on EDC's website for folks to check out. I didn't want to get into that detail. It was really, since this is a project update, but just included this overall Esplanade that you can see. The Esplanade is outboard from the FDR Drive, about 30 feet at most. And then it ties in at the existing former sanitation heliport structure at 60th Street. And that is currently where we had begun work last fall, as Will mentioned, for the platform there. And so the landing area that's shown, that's the transition platform from an existing lower level platform at that existing structure, and then the Esplanade will ramp up to the elevated Esplanade as it goes south. This community board has obviously has a lot of concern around the Clara Coffee Park. Again, this slide we've presented before, describing the work, the change to the park. It shows the new ramp structure from the bridge and the relocated memorial components and the armillary sphere. The pathways in the park will be repaved at the end of the work. The brick pavers reset. We'll be adding a water service and spigot so that parks and the conservancy group there can better water the plants. The trees in the south of the park will all remain, and they will have protective fencing around them for the duration of the work. There will be some new trees as well. The benches, while it notes here they're relocated, there will all be new benches in the park at the locations shown. And as part of a capital project, we have to make sure that the crossings and crosswalks are up to current code. So you see they're all in red blobs. That is the current city standard for the detectable warnings at pedestrian ramps for safe crossing. The park itself, the curb line is bumped out at the East 54th Street intersection to give more room to the park and pedestrians. And the crossing is shortened there across Sutton Place South as well. I had one more thought on this. I will move on. I can't think my thought was. A couple renderings that I believe we've seen before in the park. The bridge will be George Washington Bridge gray. It has an open structure. An open light structure was the real goal for the bridge design team. Another view of the bridge and park. This is an existing picture photo representation of the new bridge over the FDR. And so the important bits for you, I'm sure, is schedule and as we start the work. As mentioned, we had started the work in the north at 60th Street, and so that work is restarting now. And then we're looking to start the work in Sutton Place Park also this fall. Not this month, it's still September, later in October, to start the work in Sutton Place Park. The first work that will happen there is obviously protection of the site and installation of traffic and pedestrian protections. And then there is significant work for sewer connection and reconnection around the ramp structure that is there. There's also a very large DEP regulator, which is a large, deep subsurface structure that controls the outfall of a combined sewer outfall that's there. So we have to work around it, adjacent to it, and connect into the sewer that is near there, as well as excavate and install the formwork for the ramp structure itself, and then the footing and pile foundation for the bridge abutment. So the work in the park will start this fall, later in October, as we mentioned. We're slating for that, as well as in the north, the continued demolition of the platform and then building of the new pile supported structure in the north in what I'm calling Area 1. Right now, it looks like the bridge would be placed after the foundation work later next year. And then the park, as we have talked about, would be closed for approximately a year to do this work. And that would include the renovation of the replacement of benches and planting and the repaving of the pathway. And then the Greenway itself, it's like Will mentioned, it is an in-water structure, so it's pile supported and a platform, and then with landscaping on top. And so it would be expected to be complete in 2023. At this point, we are hopeful to accelerate some pieces of schedule, but with the delay and with the delay due to COVID and city's cash flow, we got the restart from OMB that we could go ahead. And so it's been some time kind of determining what the best schedule is, how we can get our contractors back on board. There's always a cost to delays. So really working on negotiating those things. So we are hopeful for a better opening schedule, but right now this is where we see the project landing. That was really the bulk of the update. I do have a couple appendix slides of some previously provided information that we're happy to reference if need be, but I think I think we can go to questions from the board at this point.
Great, thank you both for the presentation. So, I mean, obviously, I think it's really an understatement to sort of discuss the budget, right? This is definitely something that's been at the forefront of this project for as long as you've been presenting to us over the last few years, and it has never been more relevant, based on their current condition we're in, for better or for worse. So you discussed how the funding was reapproved, if you will. Is this entire project now fully funded? Could you describe a little bit more about the funding for this project?
The funding for this project that you see on screen is still funded in full as to what we had been allocated before the COVID shutdown. In regards to the further south UN Esplanade, we haven't, we have not engaged on that. But this project and Andrew Huswell Green Phase 2B are both funded at the same level that they were pre-pause. However, we have made it very clear in the concerns with the delay and with our contractors that there is no additional funding. We have to complete the project here, and so yes, we do have the previous allocated funding, but there is no additional.
Right, and if I can add one thing, Adam, and thank you, Catherine, for that. I think I do want to make the distinction as well between project capital funding still being in the budget and perhaps pushed out a bit versus the cash on hand
operating budget. Yeah.
When the way that these projects work, the contractors will bill EDC, EDC will bill the city. So each of those stages has a certain wait period in terms of for compliance, et cetera. So, the city is obviously being very conservative in terms of making sure that there is cash on hand to, make sure that all the basic services are fulfilled in advance of advancing projects like this and, other capital projects throughout the city. So this was one, to Catherine's point, that given that we were already under construction, obviously all of the money is still there in the capital budget. the city did feel comfortable that we were able to move this forward.
Excellent, thank you. So with that, does anyone I can ask a million more questions, but I'd like to open up to the committee to see if anybody would like to weigh in on anything.
I might just ask, hi, at the Transportation Committee, we talked about the cross between pedestrians and traffic from the FDR at 53rd Street. And we're just wondering if there's anything that could be implemented here to help with that condition. It's a place where people on the south side of 53rd cannot really cross the street because it's the exit from the FDR. So it's actually a little bit outside of.
Yeah.
But it is a condition that we noted in the neighborhood that we would like to address if at all possible.
I would have to say, unfortunately, in this project addressing, I don't see that as possible. However, we do work very closely with DOT, and we worked closely with them in regards to the crossings here. And honestly, the condition at 53rd Street is one of the reasons that of how we've structured the location of the bridge and the ramp, because it is for the exit for the FDR. And then I'll mention too that the bike traffic from 54th Street and then coming off of the Esplanade would be routed north to 55th Street if they're going to continue west. That was something from DOT as well, that they wouldn't recommend directing cyclists to 53rd Street to go westbound back across town because of that traffic. So I can't speak for DOT in regards to any improvements at 53rd Street, unfortunately.
And it really is more pedestrians than anything else. We do have a couple questions that if possible, I could address. One is a question of how long Clara Cothey Park will be closed during the construction.
That is approximately a year.
And even with the protection in place, you can't really utilize the park. Is that correct?
Correct. As you folks, I'm sure know, the park is small. There's not a whole lot of real estate, and really to build both the subsurface structure of the sewer work that's required, as well as the material that's needed to build the ramp and the foundation, there's not a lot of lay down area. We don't anticipate, the contractor's not going to be able to just take over the whole park to pile stuff in it. There's a significant part of the park that will be protected, the trees and the landscaping on the edges that I mentioned. And then we have just really very narrow pathways, right? And so the top part of the park will have to be excavated for the sewer work and the ramp. And then the adjacent street has some limited lay down area that DOT has provided. But a lot of their material will have to kind of come in on the day to be used and then put in the ground because the real estate there is so small.
Catherine, would you mind going back to the previous slide, please?
Yeah, the one with the park layout?
Yeah. And I think something else that's important to mention, and Catherine and Rob can speak to this in more detail, but the bridge that's going to be placed there, that's going to be a prefabricated offsite bridge that gets brought in and set on an existing on the foundation that we construct. So, I think it's important to keep in mind that in addition, and Sandra, it's a great question around, is there anything that we can do around the edges in terms of maintaining space? Given the amount of subsurface work, it's not just laying that ramp down. Obviously, it's building a foundation for this bridge that's going to get set later. It is at the intersection of 54th Street and Sutton Place South. Doing a very significant amount of sewer work. So, there is a lot of sort of work going on below the surface there that will require, taking that space, unfortunately. And I think, we've obviously worked really close with the Parks Department on this. We know that just up the street, there's another new park, and of course it's not the same, but, we are going to try to be in and out of there as quickly as possible. And like Catherine said, there are going to be a number of improvements made to this park as a result. So the new benches, new pavers, new trees, et cetera. Not to mention the improved pedestrian crossings and all that. I see Kathy's asking for a particular slide. I'm not sure exactly which one.
Yeah, I can't see the questions. I don't know if it messes up my sharing. So if it's a overall plan or rendering.
The park and the ramp on 54th Street.
Oh, so maybe the rendering of the new ramp?
Yeah, is that it, Kathy? Okay. While we're holding, a question I have in terms of the construction schedule, are there any incentives built in to finish ahead of schedule for the contractors and whatnot to sort of move forward to minimize the potential closure, or excuse me, minimize the closure of Clara Coffee Park?
We do not have any incentives built into the contract right now. And essentially a lot of that is, it's not necessarily like we couldn't do it. It's that we definitely cannot do it now. We were here to work a while back. We got started, there was a delay, and then now we have this subsequent delay. So it's, the contractor has been working really well with us. We've worked with them, EDC has worked with them before on other projects. Understand the significance of this space and how important it is for EDC and the city to do this work efficiently and cleanly and safely. So really finish, and honestly, the work the cost benefit essentially of incentives there is for them to do the work faster. A lot of times that means more work after hours and on weekends, which again is another impact to the community. We're working weekdays, construction hours. If we come to a point where we need overnight work or weekend work, we would kind of work to make sure that there's notice there, but also that it really is in the best interest of the project and for the community.
We do have some other community questions if there are none from the committee currently. They're wondering what consideration was given to pedestrian access from the bridge, which is now very close to the garage exit.
Sure. So during the design process, both with Stantec, who was our design engineer and landscape architects, as well as with DOT and parks, we worked really closely with, we understand that it's close to the garage, but there's a number of kind of pedestrian ground surface indicators and review of those measures with parks and with DOT. There are a number of mechanisms on the ramp to slow the cyclists down, and then measures on the surface to indicate to pedestrians as well that there are kind of changes. It's a combination of typical in the city measures that you see where you have bike and pedestrian interactions. Sorry.
An additional question, there is no water currently at the Alice Aycock Pavilion. Can water be added as part of the construction of phase 2B?
I will have to actually just check the 2B plans to see if it actually does include water for the pavilion. I am unclear, so that's a question I'll have to check on. It may be included in the 2B work as it is, or at least close enough. I'm not sure.
Another question was, how long will it take for the 2B phase and when will that start?
So the 2B phase, I'm going to go to that graphic. So, the work here in area 1, as I mentioned, will be starting. It'll be the pile work moving south, and then pile work out here so that the bridge has something to sit on, and then building out the Esplanade. And then essentially, because this is a long linear piece, the construction work will basically back itself out. We will start Andrew Huswell Green work, the marine work, the structural work later this year, early next year. But the landscape finish will really tie closely to the end of the Greenway work. So it's not like we're doing the Greenway, so here south first, all of it, and then doing Andrew Huswell Green. The Andrew Huswell Green work will be concurrent and built with the East Midtown Greenway. But again, to get ourselves out of here, the kind of landscape finish work, the surface work will really have to be the last work so that we don't have vehicles traversing over a new components. We are working to minimize like the time lag between like when the Esplanade is essentially done and Andrew Huswell Green is essentially done, but we don't want to be sending traffic over new components as much as possible.
There also seems to be a misconception in the neighborhood that Clara Coffee Park is going to be destroyed. And they're looking for some clarification that that's not actually going to happen.
I think,
can we go back to the rendering showing sure. towards the bridge from inside the park? Great.
Yeah, so I think I understand, this is definitely a significant change to the park as it is. So that my kind of personal feeling is that the word destroyed is probably, other people have different opinions about it. Do want to preserve the existing park, the lower park, as much as possible. And then where the ramp, bridge and ramp will land, there'll be new landscaping in that area, as well as some new trees and the bench relocation. We're preserving and moving the memorial plaque and the armillaria sphere that's in the space, and then these rabbit finials that are part of the existing park will also be put back in. All of the artwork and those memorial components will be removed. There'll be kind of pre-existing conditions will be taken note of. They'll be removed in a very careful careful measures with oversight by the Parks, Arts and Antiquities group. And they'll be stored at an inside location. They won't be just like in a pile in the park, like while the work is going on. They'll be stored separately and safely from the park.
There also is some concern that the park further north is not ADA accessible, which I'm not actually sure that's the case. Is anyone from the Parks Department able to clarify for us?
My understanding is that it was ADA accessible. That was part of the new work that was done, but I have been there, but I'm not in a bit.
I'm concerned that there are a lot of people who use the park, Karakofi, the current park, and would not be able to go those extra blocks further north. But if you can check and make sure that it is ADA accessible, I think that would be helpful for the community.
Right. Sandy, I think we're going to ask maybe 2 more questions, and then we're going to go ahead and move the agenda along.
Okay. Is there a separate bike lane on the bridge?
It's the bike lane, and the bike lane is it. So on the Esplanade, so on the long linear part that's in the water, the bike lane is on the landward side. In the pedestrian space, there's a lot more planting and seating on the water's side. This area here we've called the node. It's a bit wider, as you can see in this graphic. There's additional seating as well. And then on the ramp and bridge itself, the bikes and pedestrians are separated by striping, and then the other measures that slow the cyclists down. As I've mentioned, there's a bollard at this end of the ramp at the Esplanade end. There's also a bollard or 2 at the land side end. And then there are rumble strips, which slow cyclists down, as well as the sharp curves that slow the cyclists down. So the bikes are separated by striping. I actually don't have the width of the bridge at my fingertips right now. Again, we were paused for so long and we've restarted. That is something that is not at hand right now. It is wide. It's 8 feet on the Esplanade and not that wide on the bridge, but it is at DOT standard width for separated bike and pedestrian space.
And also there was a question if there are penalties for being behind schedule.
In a short answer, no. However, we do have means to accelerate the schedule and to penalize the contractor if they're essentially non-performing.
Will and Catherine, thank you very much for this presentation. Before we move on to the next one, can you sort of outline sort of the immediate, the construction, is kind of detail a little bit the construction is going to happen in the next month, and also to kind of just sort of give a better conceptual visualization of what the closure is going to be like, when you expect it to start, and when residents should start to see flyers or something like that, and then expect to see the park to be closed for upwards of a year.
Sure. So for the work in the park, we're trying to nail down the date, but it'll be later October, let's say mid-October. We'll provide additional notice to the community board and local electeds and the community and the community. The first things you will see in the park will solely be the fencing. It will be the fencing and maintenance and protection of traffic, essentially. The fencing will be what you typically see at construction sites, a plywood or chain link with screening. There'll be some protection along the retaining wall edge, the FDR edge for material, and then there'll be fencing and particular protection, the tree protection for the trees that will remain in the park. Excuse me.
Then, and then I should add as well that on site we're going to have, we're looking to have sort of project palm cards to hand out. So anybody who walks up and is curious will be able to take a short amount of information with a link to our website as well as contact information. Rob, who's here on the call, is going to be on site every day. We will all be working together to make sure that there are adequate notices sent out and everything. We've already been in touch with, I believe at least 25 and 45 Sutton Place South regarding some construction inspections that need to be done. So I know that we have a lot of contact information for residents in those buildings already, but we obviously want to be as clear and transparent and upfront regarding the construction activities that folks should anticipate in the area. And obviously, you all know where to find us if there's any questions. I'm going to put again in the chat, I put a little earlier, but I think it might have it moved down a little bit. I'm going to put the website within EDC's website that has all of the presentations we've given to date on this project, as well as the contact email address for this project. So if there's anybody's questions that we weren't able to get to, I understand there's a packed agenda, but happy to follow up later on.
I'll just quickly too, though, the in the park, the fencing, like I said, that will take like approximately to really get the fencing fully installed. And then the first work will be the protection and removal of the armillary sphere, obviously, in those components, and then the sewer work, which will be to start in November, and it'll run through November into December. So that'll be the first like work that you see. And obviously the sewer work, it involves removal of the street, excavation, and placing of pipes and infrastructure. And so that'll be essentially behind the fence for that full protection of the pedestrians. They'll also have, the contractors will have flaggers for any traffic activity that'll need to enter and exit the site. And then we'll also have some NYPD traffic agents for traffic concerns in that area. So yeah, that's kind of what that first work looks like. And then the pile work in the the north will start to move south, and that is all in water construction components. I've got just a couple pictures of what some of those barges, some of those cranes and stuff would look like in the water. That is for all the pile work, which will all be fully from the water. And as we'll mention later on next year when we set the bridge will be set also from the water. It'll be a larger barge and crane setup. The bridge will be brought in from offsite and then picked up and set in one or two kind of instances. And we'll obviously detail that out later when we get there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Will, I saw that you posted your contact again in the chat. You will be posting this presentation on your website. Is that correct? After this meeting?
Right, that's right.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much for the update. We hope to see you at future community board meetings.
Thank you. You as well. And appreciate everybody's cooperation. It's going to be a great asset for the community, so we'll get through it. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate that if you did have a question that was not answered, if you could please email the office, and we will try to make sure that everyone does get an answer to their questions.
Absolutely. And so again, the email for the office is help, like the Beatles song, at cb6.org. And this is a valuable resource to ask not only for this presentation, any concerns you may have with it, but also once construction begins, being if there's any noise or dust concerns or anything of that nature. The office, in addition to being able to run incredible Zoom meetings, are a valuable resource for our day-to-day life here in New York City. Okay, so with that said, we are going to move on to the next item in the agenda, which is another update on the waterfront, this time for the Department of Design and Construction on the east side coastal resiliency, so a little bit further to the south.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm going to try to share the presentation. Please let me know if you can see it. Is that coming through?
Yes, if you could do what Catherine did before and expand it to a full screen. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. All right, so what we're doing is we're working on water mains connecting to the third water tunnel in the area of 35th Street. I have some slides here to show you guys. So just to put,
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'm sorry, you're speaking about the water project. I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay. I saw that. I just figured I'd let it go.
I might immediately, so anyway, sorry, Dave.
I thought maybe when complaints come in, they'd call the other guy.
Not me.
Okay for me.
Thanks.
So just to put things in perspective, I put an old picture here. The one on the left is Times Square from the 1870s. And that's just a great picture because, believe it or not, the water mains you're drinking out of right now in this neighborhood were actually installed at this time. And that's pretty hard to believe if you think about it. There's not too much left of New York City from that time, you know, relatively speaking. And to think you're still drinking out of water mains that were put in right after the Civil War, you know. The problem with that is you get things like the picture to the right, where water mains break. You know, the system is old. We've had a lot of problems even shutting the system down and do work on it because the valves are just as old as the pipes. And they don't like to close too well anymore. So creates a lot of problems for us. Here's a picture, a nice cross section. And what this shows, if you look down at the bottom, it says third water tunnel. So back in 1970, they started a third water tunnel. So there was obviously 2 water tunnels before that, right? And it was just finished up in August of 2015. And what we're doing now is connecting that water tunnel at street level. And this is going to bring water to the whole east side of Manhattan. So pretty big project, many billions of dollars, many years of effort to get to where we are now. What's known as Water Tunnel 2 apparently has some issues. So by bringing Water Tunnel 3 on board into service, they can now go in and make some repairs on Water Tunnel 2 at some point. So it's all part of a larger plan. I got to say the engineers for New York City did a great job, you know, looking ahead and realizing what we need. When you look around, what do you see everywhere, right? Buildings going up left and right. And we have a really good water system that can handle it and take us into the future. So how does this project benefit the community? When we're done, you're going to get new roads, striping, everything will look nice and clean. And then nobody's supposed to dig on that road for 4 years once we finish it. So nothing makes me more upset than to finish a road and then I come by like 2 weeks later and somebody's, you know, jackhammering away on my nice new road. We take a lot of pride in it. It's one of the few things the community actually gets to see of what we do. And we'll try to make it look as best we can for you guys. So you'll have new water mains with a dependable water supply. There's a lot to think about these days with the water supply. It's important to the city, not only because we're drinking it and we need it, but also for putting out fires and emergencies. So it's good to have a system that's solid. And we're also doing upgrades. You know, once we tear the road up, we go in, we upgrade the gas, we upgrade the electrical, and let's not forget about communication cables. Everybody has internet these days. So that obviously has to come from someplace too. So we update the fiber optic cables and get everything new there. So this is just a little picture. It's a simple illustration. It just shows how we like things to be, right? Everybody in this picture has their lane. They know where they're going. Life is good, right? But the reality of life is there's hurdles. And when you do one of these water main projects, there's a lot of hurdles. The picture on the left, I think, was taken in Worth Street. And it's probably one of the worst cases you'll see. But if you look at this mess of spaghetti, that's what's underneath a typical New York City roadway. So to make room for a new 48-inch water main, like you see on the picture on the right, we have to get through all these hurdles. We have to find whatever, maybe an old gas line or some electrical that needs to be replaced. And what we do is we relocate it and upgrade it and make room for the water main. And when you're doing this from the plans, you know, the plans are only as good as the measurements that were taken 130 years ago, 150 years ago. Somebody went out and took a tape measure and measured from the curb and said, okay, my gas line is 16 feet off the curb in this area. So the designers go ahead and they make up a plan, you know, with that in mind. And then we get out in the street and we do a test pit and we find out, okay, it's 13 feet from the curb. And now we have a conflict because now we have to put a water main and we didn't expect to have a gas line in the way. or even worse, like we had in this job, a steam line in the way. So that creates a problem, and sometimes it delays the project. We've had a couple issues like that. We've managed to work through it. We actually have solutions to all our issues. It took some time to get to that point, but we're moving in the right direction right now. And we're moving into construction instead of design, where we had these issues. So basically the project covers 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue, mostly between 35th Street, 33rd Street. And we have quite a bit of work on 35th Street because that's where the shaft connects over by the park. So that's like our center of our project, not physically, but that's where, you know, the most important area. And we also had quite a bit of work on 33rd Street. So here's a map I made up. If you see lines in blue, blue lines are work that is done. And there's different size water mains. The thin blue lines are 12-inch water mains. The ones that are a little thicker are 20-inch. I'm not sure it matters to all you guys too much, but just to give you an idea of you know, what we did accomplish out there over the past 2 years. What you see on this sheet is the 2 thicker red lines that run up and down 3rd Avenue. That's 36-inch water main, which we're planning to start in November on 3rd Ave. Where right now we're doing some steam work down on 33rd and 3rd, where you see the green bubble. And once we get the steam out of the way, then we're going to jump in and start on the water mains. And that's probably, I would say that's probably a 6-month process. The DEP, who runs the water system, likes to have their large water mains back up and running by May. So that's kind of our deadline. We'll probably start November 2020, and we'll try to finish with any luck around April of 2021, and maybe a little sooner if we're lucky. Also, right now, we're working at 2nd Avenue and 33rd Street, taking care of some steam issues. Those thick red lines there also are the big 48-inch water mains, which we have to install. And if we go to the right a little bit, you see 2 more green circles there. East 35th Street, that's right outside St. Vartan's Church. We're doing some gas work there and steam work. And we just finished up today the big green bubble to the right, which was gas work. So we were able to pull up all the equipment and the protective barricades we had in the street. And then we got a little help from Mother Nature. It rained today, so that'll be all washed off nice and clean, hopefully tomorrow. There's been a lot of questions in that area about the bike lane. That area calls for, in our specs, it calls for a shared bike lane, which is basically a car or a bicycle could be using that lane at any time. We've been in talks with DOT about putting a dedicated bike lane in that area. And I know they're trying to come up with a plan right now, but you can see the red lines on 2nd Avenue from 34th to 36th Street. We have quite a bit of work to do in that area. So we're trying to figure out how to give a dedicated bike lane, but also keep lanes of traffic. Because we have to keep 4 lanes of traffic active there. So it's not easy to fit it all in, but traffic's a little less than it used to be. You know, maybe we can make some adjustments and make that work a little better. Then moving along, down on 1st Avenue, we've been doing some electrical work, and we also have to do some test pits. Like I was saying, you don't always find things where they're supposed to be in the street. So we're gonna go out, we're gonna verify some stuff. We already found a few things that weren't where they were shown on the drawings. So now we're choosing a new location for some of the water mains, and we have to go in and do some testing and see if those locations pan out. So it stinks, it's kind of time consuming. And you know, people see us coming back to the same spot and say, geez, you guys were just there, you know, what are you doing now? So it's kind of hard to explain to people sometimes, but you know, these are the things we deal with doing this type of work. and it's pretty common. It happens on every project, no matter how hard you try to prevent it. When you're working with unknown underground, it can't be helped too much. So that's it for my project slide. I wanted to put this up in case anybody has any questions. We have Karen on board, and she has an email, secondavccl@gmail.com. She also gives her own cell number. You can call her anytime if you have a question about something, 917-631-5074. She's good. She knows who to contact if you have an issue, or she'll tell you, if it's not us. A lot of times we get calls and people say, what are you guys doing out here? It's Sunday morning, and sometimes it is us and sometimes it's not. It could be a Con Ed crew. There's a city crew going through right now doing some sewer work on 33rd Street. And I saw some people out there striping today. That wasn't us. So there's always a lot going on, but if it's us, we'll do our best to help you out. And if it's not us, we'll do our best to help you find the right person.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. So I see that Gene has his hand raised. Gene, you have the floor. And you're next. Gene?
Yeah, hello?
Yes. Floor is yours.
Is the mic working? No.
Yep, it was. There you go. You're good. We can hear you. Nope, nope, now, no.
Now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good.
Great.
Sorry about that. I blame somebody else. Anyway, thanks for the presentation, Dave. I really like the slide with the people in the lanes and the hurdles. And because my question revolves around this. I'm vice chair of the Transportation Committee. And we were just reassured by DOT yet again that they're going to begin working on that 2nd Avenue bike lane by the end of this month, which the last time I looked is tomorrow. So what we're hearing from you seems to contradict that. So where are we in reality?
I had a discussion with DOT, and we said we would try to find a way to put a dedicated bike lane there, but it can't be permanent for probably about 2 years, because I'm going to go back to the other slide. Here it is. Can you guys see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. So we still have to do this large section of water main.
Right.
And we still have to do all this. And then, down here. And this is where the shaft is, generally speaking.
I got you.
There's also equipment that goes in there that measures the flow of the water and what have you. There's a lot to do over there. So I would say it's going to be 2 years before we restore the road and you can do something really permanent there.
Right, but it's what I understand all that. So what I'm asking basically is a couple of things. One is you're talking like there'll be a dedicated bike lane, but it's probably going to be movable or mobile at different points as you're working through this process. Because I understand your problems with staging and what you're doing. Okay, is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. Yeah.
Okay, and the time frame for this part of the project is more or less what again?
For these trunk mains over here, let's see, we got 3rd Avenue shut down in the fall. Chances are good. It probably could be the fall of next year.
Okay. So this brings up the last part of this question, which is, why do we have to have 4 lanes of car traffic maintained when traffic is down so far all across the city? I mean, the ring roads are busy. We see this every day, and certain parts of the city are busy, but in fact, where you're working is at best intermittently busy, and is nothing like what the traffic flow normally is. And we're hoping that not to expect that real soon. So does that allow you to take away another lane of traffic? Is there some rule that you're abiding by that tells you have to maintain the 4 lanes of traffic at this time?
Yeah, we're given our marching orders by DOT. So I'd be open to looking at it. The DOT has been very good to us, and they've actually let us have some extra lanes. For example, on 35th Street for a while, we were only supposed to be working weekends there.
Right.
And, we went to weekdays while things were slow. And we probably shaved like 6 months off of the schedule for the electrical work there. So it worked out good. But then when school started, they said, we're going to go back to the original traffic stipulations because we expect it to get busy. But you're right. I don't see it to be that busy out there. And I'm open to having that conversation.
Well, I appreciate that because I'm not trying to start an interagency fight or anything. I know you guys play pretty well together, so I want to keep it that way.
Listen, I'm a
and
city
I
bike
appreciate
rider.
how much work you've got to do on this stretch of infrastructure because I'm kind of aware of it. Long time ago, like 30 years ago, I wrote a story about for the New York Times Magazine about pipes exploding all over New York. And what you're talking about is something I know something about. Yeah. So we're just trying to make it so that people can survive. It's a very heavily trafficked bicycle and pedestrian corridor there, and we want to keep it safe. So
it is. And honestly, if we can do something with it and make it a dedicated bike lane, it's a safer situation for me also, because if someone gets hurt going through there, you know, it ends up falling on us. And, you know, I don't want to see that happen either. But if we can put them someplace, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you for your answers, Dave. We're going to turn it over to Anne, and then we'll ask the question from the public.
This is kind of a long-standing pet peeve about the bus stop on 3rd Avenue between 33rd and 34th, which was shut down for quite a while, even though no work was actually being done there. I did see that it had been reinstated, but I'm assuming if you want to go back to that slide of 3rd Avenue, I'm assuming that when you actually get to be working there, you're going to have to shut that down. Yeah, so it's the between 33rd and 34th, not like just north of the Steamwork. Where the spot where the bus stop used to be and kind of is again, there's actually also a restaurant in the street there. So there's kind of multiple conflicts there. And I just am wondering if you're aware of those and what your plans are to, you know, deal with that. Like, okay. I'd love the bus stop not to be shut down if it doesn't need to be.
Right. The bus stop you're talking about, I believe, is right in this area where the hardware store used to be, right?
No. It's the next block up.
Oh, there's another one up here?
It's right, it's between 33rd and 34th.
I know there was one just south of 33rd. Well, here's
that was like a express bus or something. That like the 101, 102, 103.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you what we do is we submit our work plans to the MTA, and they tell us whether or not the bus stop has to be shut or if it can be moved. And then, you know, there's a pretty sizable fee that we pay to do that. What happened here was we had full intentions of doing this work that we're doing now, the steam work, a couple months back, and it got delayed. And I reached out to the MTA and I asked them if they wanted to open up the bus stop, and they said, "How long are you going to be shut for?" And I said, "Probably a couple months." And they said, "We don't want to confuse the public and open it and close it and open it and close it. You know, get out there."
I had that same exact conversation with them. I would say last winter, like certainly before COVID.
Yeah. And now what you have is a lot of the restaurants have there's outdoor seating and they're in the street. And I'll be honest with you, we've bent over backwards to help these people out. You know, they're trying to run a business and trying to survive. And they've been very good to us as well, you know. So
no, for sure. But you need to be aware that that's like a sort of particular, like that specific block, there's a lot of conflicts there. So you might need to do a little extra outreach.
Yeah, I mean, that would really fall on the MTA to decide how they want to handle that.
Well, Sandy,
I don't really get to say in it.
Sandy, since Claire's not here, but maybe we can bring that up in. I feel like this whole presentation should have been a transportation.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah.
Sorry, Adam.
No, that's okay. I mean, I think this falls under your umbrella, but I was actually going to hope that I know that you guys have talked about the subject matter, you know, ad nauseum in your committee. So, but if there's something else that you guys could do to sort of address these concerns, that would be appreciated. So we'll ask one more question from the general public, and then we're going to go ahead and move the agenda. And so, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
I was going to do that, I think.
Oh, go for it, please.
Yeah, someone asked about how they could get more information, and I know I actually get, I think it's every week, an update for this particular project. So if they were to follow the email that you presented previously, they could get updates every week. And definitely please phone the number to find out why people are starting early or on a weekend, because this is concern about, the question is how can they be more involved, and they want more transparency on the work. And I think it's there, but hopefully they'll be able to get the information that you've presented.
Yeah, Dave, if you could put up my my email again, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, and I'd like to add too, if you have a complaint about somebody starting too early or something of that nature, the best thing to do for the residents is call 311 and get it logged in. If you guys call and it's on my project and I get a call for 311, it doesn't really look good for me, to be honest with you. And if I don't take care of it, it causes a lot of problems. But I'm pretty confident we're doing our best for you guys out there. And a lot of times the complaints are coming from other, work that's going on. But nevertheless, call 311, get it logged in, and it's a good system. Somebody will be held responsible until your question's resolved.
Dave, before we let you go, there's a specific question about the plates, about how they're not secured and they're always crashing. Can you speak to that?
Yes. I know the resident who wrote that. I saw, we talked to her about every day. She's great. I know she has my contractor's numbers, and she talks to the guys every day. Plates are nothing but a pain in the neck. You'll see them throughout the city. They're put down according to a standard detail. There's people that come from the agency and they come to see that these things are installed according to the details we're given, the standards. And even if you do them right, just by their nature, they flex, they make noise, and it's a terrible pain in the neck for everybody involved. But unfortunately, there's not a better way to do it. One of the things we can do is we go out and weld the plates. But sometimes you get a bus that comes by or something heavy, or particularly when they go fast, the plates flex, the welds crack. So when we get complaints about it, we run out and take a look, and sure enough, the welds are broken. We send the workers out to weld it. Sometimes we've sent the workers in on weekends. They've had to come from home. I don't know if they even get paid for that, to be honest with you, but the contractor must have to pay them. So I'm sure they don't appreciate it. So yeah, it's tough, and I feel bad for everybody. Our work is invasive. I've done a lot of bridge projects, and if you're working on a bridge, you're typically out of the way somewhere, off on the side of here I am, we have our work crews and right outside your window, and you come walking out of your house with your kids and your dog, and there we are, Jack.
Dave, sorry to cut you off. Sandy, did you have one last thing, or is that I didn't?
No, that's it. Other than we really, really were hoping to get some kind of protection for bicyclists going south past your construction site currently. I think that's one of the reasons that, we invited you here this evening. And if there's any possible way you can provide some kind of right now they're barrels, something outside of your construction fence to protect people, it would be greatly appreciated.
All right.
We'll ask DOT as well.
It's kind of got to come from DOT. Like, I can tell you what we're planning on doing, and then somebody needs to come up with a way of doing it and tell me this is what you guys need to do, and we'll certainly follow it.
We will certainly ask. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think it's a good idea. So.
Thank you, Dave. So again, if anybody wants to email Dave's team, his email and contact information is on the screen. This presentation will be shared on the CB6 website. And then, as always, you can email CB6 office directly, help@cb6.org. Dave, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And now we will hear from your colleague at the other portion of DEDC regarding the ESCR updates for District 2 of the larger ESCR project, which is, or excuse me, Area 2, which is here in CB6. So if the ESCR team, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, can you hear you? Yep.
Great. All right. Hi, everyone. This is Q Amiri with Coastal Resiliency Unit at DDC. I'm going to kick off our presentation tonight. I hope you can all see my screen, and I'll hand it off to a number of our consultant team members so we can go through the presentation. Quick disclaimer: this PowerPoint presentation has a lot of slides in it, and we deliberately wanted to expand this with more details so it could be a standalone reference with a lot of content and has a lot of step-by-step explanations of the construction process and the registration process from sort of an overview of what it takes to take a project from final design into the first day of construction, that sort of procurement and pre-construction time in between those two major phases. So we're not going to go through every single slide, but I wanted to mention that the information is there. We're going to upload this to our project website tomorrow, and CV6 has a copy as well, and it's available for anybody via email and the websites, and people can hopefully read through it on at their own leisure, and we're available for questions afterwards. So with that, this is our sort of more or less our agenda highlights. One of the biggest updates that we have, and we haven't been to CB6 in quite some time since we finalized our design earlier this year. But we've hit some major milestones so far in the procurement and pre-construction phase as we get closer to starting our construction this fall, later this year. Right off the bat, we just launched our new website. The website that we had prior to this was very heavy on design, and all the materials from the design phase were uploaded there. We expanded that. We kept the existing address and existing sections, and we expanded on that. And my coworker, Melissa Johnson, will be showing a snippet of that, and she can walk through some details on that. I just wanted to mention that quickly. And the construction timeline, again, this presentation has a lot of slides on the various different sections that the project has been broken up to. We're going to focus on project area 2, that's within CB6 district for tonight. But again, all the material and content is there for everybody to read through it. And we presented pretty much the same presentation to Committee Board 3 folks a few weeks ago, except we added more details for tonight, specifically for the project area 2 CB6 area. And my colleagues, Joe Petroselli and John Lynch from HNTV Lyra will go through those slides. And towards the end, we have our sub-consultant Tran Gui from Gui Studios. She will talk about our Section 3 plans. And after that, we'll have Melissa Johnson walk through our community engagement strategies and timeline. This is another sort of a what we've heard slide. Wanted to throw this in there. We've received a number of questions. This is a summary of that. Project materials on the websites are available. I'll show you a screenshot of that. There are a lot of questions surrounding the project area 2 phasing and timeline, obviously, and when the contractor is going to start, what kind of activities they're going to start with, and how will they be accountable in terms of their deliverables and meeting the project milestones and project schedule. So John Lynch and Joe Petroselli will walk through that a little bit at a higher level. But again, there are a lot of details in the upcoming slides that folks can read through, and we can expand at the next meeting. And I also wanted to say next month and the following month, November, December, we will be back with a lot more details as we get closer to starting having the contractor on board and starting the work. So there'll be more graphics and more timelines and more details available to talk about. Parallel conveyance is the drainage and sewer upgrade portion of the project. There's some information included in this deck, and environmental monitoring is also a big concern, obviously, for all of us. And we want to make sure that we are delivering our commitments And with that, I quickly want to say before Joe and John jump in, that once the contractor is fully on board, one of their first deliverables is to give us as DDC their draft schedule and their draft environmental monitoring plans. There's a host of different plans that comes in that package. Once these plans are developed, then we review it with HNTB and Lero as our program managers for this project. And there's a lot of back and forth and coordination with the contractor that those plans get finalized within the next few months, and they issue the final plans to us that we can provide publicly for everybody to have. And that's all coming soon. As of today, we have not issued the notice to proceed for the contractor. We're getting very close to that date. Sometime within the next week or two, we'll be able to give the contractor for this specific area the notice to proceed and the following steps of the next sort of 3 to 4 months is what John will talk about in the following slides. And really quick, this is on the right side, a screenshot of the new website of where you can find the presentations. The address of the website is still the same, just different sections got shifted around with a lot more additional sections and content that we added on. With that, Joe, I'll hand it off to you, and Joe's going to walk us through really quickly of the step-by-step process of pre-construction and registration phase before we start the project. Joe?
Good evening. I'm Joe Petroselli with the HNTB Lero team, and I'll walk you quickly through these procedural slides, which get to a contractor actually starting work. Once bids are received and evaluated by DDC and recommended for approval, that starts a series of reviews through a number of different city agencies. And as Q indicated, we're at the tail end of the process for PA2, and the issuance of the NTP is where the clock starts, so to speak. Next slide.
Yeah, and really quickly, sorry, Joe, just so everybody's aware, earlier this afternoon, we actually got approval. So on the 4th box over here that says Comptroller Register Contract, this is what happened actually today, this afternoon, which was one of the major milestones of our project so far, and we're very excited about that. And as Joe just mentioned, this allows us to go to the next step on this sort of turquoise green last box that we can start working on issuing the notice to proceed as the next step.
So with the notice to proceed, the clock starts on a number of very important pre-construction activities that the contractor is responsible for. The contractor will be submitting, and all of these documents and submittals will be reviewed and approved by DDC before construction can begin in any meaningful way. Including in these approvals is the noise and air quality monitoring plans, the baseline schedule and phasing plan. The baseline schedule is very important because that will actually be what the contractor is monitored in terms of meeting milestones and their performance. They'll submit a health and safety plan to assure everyone that they are operating and maintaining the construction in a safe manner, both for the workers and for the public. They'll prepare their field offices and mobilization will actually start. Next slide. With that, you'll see some preliminary construction activities. You'll see some fencing, some removal of site furnishings and equipment. They may start to remove and relocating some trees and shrubs. They'll be doing their installation of their monitoring equipment for air and noise. They'll be testing that equipment. They'll be calibrating it, and they'll be collecting data on existing noise and air quality prior to the start of construction. Next slide. with
Sorry to
the-
interrupt, but so the previous slides that you're showing here, is this going to take place in area 2, or is this predominantly going to be in area 1?
This is in area 2.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a step-by-step.
Activities will be
This is just a general. Sorry, this is just a general step-by-step of a typical process for any construction project that we have at DDC, which applies to Area 2, your district, and Area 1 further south. And this slide is what's coming next. Once we issue the notice to proceed in the next week or two, the next step after that is for the contractor to sort of dive into this slide. And then they go and Joe can expand on this, but then they will go into this piece, which includes construction fence and bringing up their machinery and everything like that. And we'll definitely have advanced notices for every single one of these steps to the folks here.
Yeah, I mean, this slide is the heart of the construction. It's all of the cut and fill, the major earthwork, relocating utilities, installing new utilities, the actual flood protection, walls and gates, and then finally the landscaping, the hardscaping, the furnishing, the materials, and turning it back to the public for public use. Next slide. This is kind of just a recap of the process. During the design phase, the designers will develop preliminary schedules and preliminary phasing plans. Those will be incorporated into bid documents. Specific requirements that the contractor must follow will also be included in those documents. Requirements like having to monitor noise and air quality, site access restrictions on where they can and can't work when. And
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for the sort of the overview of how this works. But if we could start to kind of move further into the project, and we can just refer to these as general slides. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Joe. Can you guys hear me?
Thanks. Thank you.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, John.
Okay, great. So my name's John Lynch. I'm with HNTB Lero. We're the program manager, construction managers working with DDC, and very soon with DDC Construction as we approach construction on these 4 projects. This slide is an overview of the 4 projects in the ESCR. The PA2 in the north, PA1 in the south, the early package, which is down at the south end by the compost area, and then the parallel conveyance is in kind of a brown color here. And I'm going to focusing on PA2 and PC. Okay, so as Joe said, we're getting close to notice to proceed on all these packages. We'll have an early package. We have project area 2 expected in the next couple of weeks now that we have the money. And then project area 1, we expect notice to proceed by the end of the year. Parallel conveyance in the spring. They're going to go out for bid soon. So this is color coded, similar to what was up before. So you see after you get notice to proceed, you're looking at contractor submittals, all these environmental plans. They have to get an engineer out there to make sure we don't settle any buildings. They don't cause too much vibration. The site safety plan will be prepared. All their submittals will come in and they'll start ordering materials. We expect, heavy construction on the flood wall and in the parks 2 to 3 months after notice to proceed. We can move on. So the early package,
I'm going to skip.
Okay,
sorry, I'm going to skip straight to PA2. Yeah.
That's okay. So project area 2, you can go to the next slide.
1 second. This slide has been very problematic because
so
here
we're attaching to Con Ed's facility at 15th Street, moving all the way north to the VA hospital, 24th Street. We have 3 parks in this area, which we'll talk about the phasing of those parks and how we came up with that and what the restraints on the contractor are. You can go to the next slide. So we expect notice to proceed in the next couple of weeks. As you said, we'll be getting the baseline schedule, all the environmental plans, the construction reports to make sure that we don't affect any of the residents in the area. And then construction is to start early next year, heavy construction. We can move on. Okay, so some of the construction criteria where we phase the parks so that Asser Levy goes first. Upon NTP, they can start working in that park, and then We phased Stuyvesant Cove in fall 2021, and then Murphy Brothers Playground in 2022. So this will keep the maximum amount of park open. Stuyvesant Cove Park itself will be cut in half and phased to keep half the park open. You have to maintain access to the ferry, to the Solar One, and the public has to have access to open areas during construction. We've had some pre-construction discussions with the contractor already, and they've come up with some plans to maintain access while they do their work. We can go to the next slide. So we're here now, mid to late October. We're talking about notice to proceed. We're talking about submittals, field office for our engineers, field office for them, where they're going to have laid down for materials, ordering materials, submittals, and all their safety plans.
And John, I just want to jump in quickly. On the second bullet here where it says early October controller registration, we weren't expecting that registration to come in until next week. So today was good news that it came in earlier, and that means the 2 steps after that we can get started with that about a week or 2 ahead of our schedule that we were sort of conservatively estimating about a month ago. But again, everything that John just talked about, back to this slide, the lighter brown area that's sort of November into December is about a 2 to 3 month, starting October, November, December, 2 to 3 month period that has a lot of prep work and sort of non-invasive construction activities that the contractor will start diving into. And you'll start seeing the construction fencing going up around Astor Levy and in the area around Solar One, starting sort of the beginning of next year in 2021. So I just want to emphasize on that piece.
Right. Okay, so this is just a graphic of showing the parks and how the phasing in the contract restricts the contractor's access. A question came up before regarding that. So Astor Levy, all the way on the right, is the first park to close. Then next year we'd have half of Sty Cove Park closed and Astor Levy will open. Then by summer 2022, we'll flip Sty Cove Park and then start on Murphy Brothers Playground as the last. And you can see where half the park's open, Astor Levy's open, Murphy Brothers and Sty Cove being worked on, and then all the work complete. And to address one of the questions that came up in an earlier presentation, where we in the contract are restricting access, so he can't get into Murphy Brothers Playground until 2022. So, and there are interim milestones if he doesn't complete the work in the parks. There are liquidated damages in the contract that he has to finish and open it back up. And there are incentives on the contract for the completion of the flood wall and at substantial completion to make sure he stays on track in terms of he or she stays on track in terms of completing the work and doesn't get behind. So that's built into the contract. We can move on. We want to skip.
Yeah, so the rest of this is, yeah, we're going to skip through. Again, all this is here for folks to read through, but it's a similar sort of structure specifically for PA1. And this is PC. Adam, I'm not sure. We can dive into this in more depth in the next presentations since we're not really close to kicking this piece off just yet. But
fine.
There is some information here.
Yeah, so yeah,
let's
just
get
go
through
back
this
to
in the
the,
interest
go back
of time.
to,
I want to make sure we have time for questions.
just, you know, the PC will be working the street in different areas. It's called the parallel conveyance because it's putting in additional piping to get the water out in case of a big rain event. So it doesn't, you know, where the wall stops the water from coming in from the East River, the PC makes sure that in a heavy rain event, all the water is able to be taken out. And so that one, like I said, we'll be expecting a notice to proceed in the spring.
All right, Trang, thank you, John and Joe. Trang, you're up.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so just to review, the city has committed to a 25% utilization rate for MWBEs, and there is a Section 3 goal for this program with the HUD federal funding, and the three components of the Section 3 goals are the 30% of new hires should be Section 3 individuals, and that means low-income individuals and who hopefully who are local in the area as part of the to participate in their own recovery and this resiliency project. And then the other remaining two goals is not just individual hiring, but also contracting opportunities. 10% of construction contracts would be a goal for the Section 3, and then the remaining non-construction related types of contracts would be at 3%. I won't go through all the qualifications of what the requirements are to meet these things, but we could just move on to the next slide to talk about strategies. So the team has three areas of opportunities that we think where we could make these goals, and starting with the program management team, including the HNTB and LERO team here, we went in with over a dozen MWB firms and a Section 3. I am one of them. And moving on to construction, when as each contractor is onboarded, we will be looking at their plan for MWBE and Section 3 and outreach on how they will meet their goals. So this is with the good news with the registration for this current contractor, this is the time for us to start looking at what they're planning to do with their mobilization, where they're procuring their fencing, their trailers, any kind of equipment, that sort of thing. So this is an exciting time for us to start prepping and making suggestions on if they haven't already have their list of firms that they're looking to contact. And then beyond the program and general contracting team, we're also looking to work with the local communities with other opportunities for local businesses to participate. So whether it's local food trucks or other services in the area as we ramp up, and obviously when after COVID, if we get our community information center up and running, those would be other areas where we can include more local vendors and individuals. And I'll just skip right through all of this. So previously we listed all of these opportunities for potential getting on list for bids, and also preparing firms and individuals to get their training and certifications to prepare for the upcoming open positions and subcontracting opportunities. And now all of these are up on the updated ESCO website, and it'll take you directly to each site, and it's broken up into individual career opportunities as well as subcontracting opportunities. And I think there's one more slide with upcoming events. So HNTB's Partners webinar series 2 have been done already. There's one more remaining in that series, and the Competitive Edge Conference, a major industry event, just occurred last week. And then the next large one for the state is in December with the usual forum in Albany with the state sponsor. So we'll be updating all of these with as events and opportunities just come up.
Thank you.
Great. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Melissa Johnson.
Thanks, Q. So for the community engagement aspect of the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project, we have, as part of our strategy, several different components that you can see here. We are looking at a community information center. We will have community construction liaisons deployed as construction begins, and they'll be working within the community. We have a construction fencing art program, which I'll talk about momentarily. And then we have our newly launched website, which has a public inquiry tool. We also will be utilizing social media to communicate construction impacts to the public. And in addition, we have the Section 3 MWBE program that Trang just discussed, as well as our CAG, our Community Advisory Group, and our work with community board meetings. Next slide, please. Oh, that's good. Thank you. So as Q mentioned, we did just launch a construction kind of focused Eastside Coastal Resiliency website. So you can check that out. It's accessible via the same link as the previous website, and it does have all of the information that the prior website had, but it will have additional information as construction progresses, such as notifications of traffic impacts and community impacts, updates on our community outreach initiatives, information about contracting and employment opportunities, and then information generally about our CCLs and where to find our project team within the community. Another important component of this new website is that if you go to the contact page, you can access, you can submit an inquiry to our project team if you have a question or a concern about something or anything at all. You can send a message to us and we will communicate back with you through this new web-based inquiry tool. Next slide. This is what the tool looks like. It is multilingual, so it's very user-friendly overall. The inquiries go directly to our CCLs who may need to coordinate with other members of the project team to get you an answer. But once you're in this tool, there's also a way to sign up for notifications, for example, to see what traffic impacts might be happening or what's going to be going on in your neighborhood when construction starts or anytime over the next couple of years. There are boxes to check. For example, if you have a question about environmental or you have a question about a park, there's a section where you would choose that. And then also we have a map too that allows you to kind of zoom in and select on the map where your concern or question relates to. So once you go in here, you will be asked a couple of brief questions to create a user profile the first time. But once you do that, you can continue to use the tool without having to do that process every time. Another big component of our outreach strategy is construction fencing art program. Next slide, please. So as part of our project, there will be a significant amount of fencing put up in different areas of the community to secure the construction sites. And as part of that fencing, typically you'll see those fences around New York City with sort of a green mesh or a white mesh on them. But we have initiated a program to make ours a little bit more aesthetically pleasing in very public facing areas of the project. So our construction fencing will have kind of three components. One will be informational, such as what you see here, information about the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. We also will have some wayfinding information on some of the panels as well. For example, if you're used to entering a park in a certain area and you would need to access it through another area, the panels would tell you that. And then the third component is artwork. So we have developed a construction fencing contest, art contest for the local community that will be geared towards students, K-12 students, as well as local artists. We are currently collaborating with several local cultural organizations to serve on the selection committee. And CB3 and CB6 will also be serving on that selection committee as well. So this contest will be rolled out in the very near future. So stay tuned for additional information on that, which will be the first of several competitions throughout the project where people can submit entries that will eventually wind up on the construction fencing. Next slide.
So thanks, Melissa. That concludes our updates for this round. Adam, I saw a few questions in the chat box. Let me know how we would like to address that.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and ask a couple. Then I know Sandro's had his hand raised for almost the whole presentation, so I know he's probably ready to jump in. And then we'll address the questions in the chat. Also, members of the community, members of the board, if you would like to ask a question, please be sure to use the hand raise tool, and we'll call on you, and the project team can answer questions. My question's for Melissa. I believe it's on slide 46 regarding the interactive map tool. I'm kind of a map nerd of sorts, and this really piqued my interest. I think this is a great tool. I think there's a high level functionality that can be optimized here. I'm curious, is that will these features be able to feed into other third-party maps, specifically something like Google Maps or Apple Maps or Strava, or things of that nature that users of this park, especially joggers and bikers, might use, and that way they don't have to create a new or seek out a new website in order to see the construction impacts?
Sure, that's a great question. So this map on here is part of our public inquiry tool. So this really is just for people to kind of select a location so we know what they're talking about. But if you're referencing kind of changes to bike paths and traffic, our CCLs typically do work with Apple Maps and Google Maps and Uber and Lyft to make sure that they have the most up-to-date construction information so that that is reflected in their systems. So our community construction liaisons typically do, push out information to them so that they can update that, if that answers your question. I think that's what you were asking.
It does. I'm glad that you guys are considering that, and I think that'll go a long way in terms of communicating the construction impacts. That said, Sandro, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Adam. So I just had a couple of quick questions. Actually, I see one of my questions has been asked a couple of times in the chat, so I'll just ask it now. Do we actually have any details around the building that's actually going to be the vault and the building construction timeline on 20th Street?
John, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so we're talking about, I'm sorry, I'm back. Are we talking about the interceptor gate on 20th Street?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's a great question because it's a very deep and a very big building. So yeah, that's part of the PC package up at the north end on 20th Street. If you want to pull up the PC packet, the overall, all four projects, yeah.
Sorry, hold on a second. Sorry.
All right.
A couple of these slides get stuck because of the graphics.
Yeah, that's it. So you're talking on 20th Street there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's we're working through that now. That project is getting ready to be advertised, and so they're finalizing the drawings for it, and we're looking at the schedule in terms of when that work's going to happen. You have two interceptor gates. You have one at the north end at 20th Street, and then one down all the way at the south end that protect the entire area.
Right.
So we have preliminary schedules on when we think that'll be in there. I don't think there's going to be any restraints or milestones in the contract related to that. But it's certainly something that once we get more details about that construction, we would definitely share that with everybody.
Sure. So just a question, and I understand that you don't have a full plan for that necessarily completed, but is there an attempt or kind of alignment being done with reaches N and O so that to minimize the impact to the area? I know we talked previously about dump trucks and construction equipment being brought in and how we can stage that to not have excessive amounts of traffic. Is that being looked at?
Yeah, I think, it's being looked at. We'd have to figure out how it's going to be staged. Are we going to be able to utilize areas under the FDR near there to house all this equipment to minimize what's sitting on 20th Street? I mean, I guess that's your question, right? And
yeah, just to minimize the pedestrian and the vehicular traffic impact, right, on 20th and the service road and that whole area and Avenue C.
Avenue C north of 20th. Yeah, we were actually out there with our PA2 contractor last week, just to find out where they plan to set up and what their time frame is, and we would have to coordinate that with PC, with the PC package, which is putting in those big interceptor gates, and work out the schedule, and then potentially having lay down areas that are away from residents, so it minimizes the street impacts there. But it's a big building, it's a big excavation, so but we're looking at that, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And
I appreciate that.
Just to jump in here very quickly, sorry to interrupt. Each one of these colored areas or boxes have a separate contractor. The orange, the blue, the green, the red. So, and all of them will have to be tightly coordinated with one another, but also with all the other agencies out there, DOT, EDC, everybody else, which we have already been doing for the past couple of years. So we'll continue to do that.
And then I had one more question, which also kind of focuses on that area. The ferry access is almost bifurcating Reach N. How, I know you had mentioned in terms of the staging that they were going to provide access to the ferry throughout the construction of Reach N. How exactly are you looking at having like an access from the north end of Reach N at one portion and then switching it to the south? And how are you planning on providing access to the ferry?
Right, so we provided a suggested phasing plan for Stuyvesant Cove Park that has to be reviewed and approved by DDC. And with the intention of keeping half of it open at all times, but certainly to maintain access and then.
Well, but specifically, I'm talking. So Stuyvesant Cove covers. You're talking about Reach N and O, right?
That's right.
So the ferry terminal is well, like 40% into Reach N there.
Yeah. So that's going to be an issue. We were out there talking to them about just that and how you maintain access and whether it comes from the north side or the south side when you're doing that half of the park.
Okay, so that's still being worked out too. Okay, thank you.
It's being worked out, yeah.
Thank you very much. End of questions.
Thank you, Sandro. Is there anybody else from the committee that has a question? Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and ask. I'll go ahead and ask a few. So one of the things that this board has been very concerned about is sort of broader mitigations in terms of when these portions are closed. I was just wondering to see if there's been any sort of update in terms of some of the mitigations, specifically some of the ones that we've thrown out in previous resolutions and whatnot, specifically regarding the Con Ed pier further north, and specifically areas within Reach N and I guess Reach O.
Yeah, for parks mitigations, I have my parks colleagues here, Zoe and Sarah. I think you ladies are here. So we're going to pull up their presentation shortly after these questions, and they can talk through that. Well,
we can go ahead and save it.
Yeah, why don't we hold off on that and we'll revisit that later.
Great. I guess it's it for me. So I guess we can go ahead and move on into the parks portion of the presentation, or whatever next the presentation.
Great.
Adam, did you want to address some of the community questions that we have?
Oh, sure. Sandy, go ahead. My apologies.
Yeah, no problem. This one's kind of a broad question. How do you make the 20th Street structure not hideous?
The gatehouse building?
Yes, yes.
Well, I wish I had a picture to pull up right now. So the design team had multiple iterations for the facade and the design of that building. And the first and foremost goal was for it to not be a sore thumb and not stick out in a sort of negative way, and wanted to blend it into the surrounding environment of that area. So glass brick was decided upon after multiple rounds of design review, and the Public Design Commission gave us a lot of feedback and direction as well. So that's how we landed on, sort of in a nutshell, how we landed on the design that we had presented earlier this year. And I can bring up those slides later at the next meeting, or attach it to the end of this one when we upload it.
And there was a question about the size, that apparently people anticipate it will be the size of a shipping container. Is that correct?
The size was a very specific, I can't really elaborate too much on this. I need my design team to chime in. They're not here right now. I can get you more details later, but the size, it's a very specific criteria because it's housing, I don't know if we have our DEP colleagues here on the phone, but because it's housing the pump station, essentially it's a building to house the pump station. They have to comply with certain codes, building codes, and enough area to operate for that sort of function. I'm sorry, I don't have that engineering background for this, but let me come back with more details on the size of it.
Okay, and this may be a question for the parks, but has an alternate bike lane through Stuyvesant Cove Park been determined yet once the park is closed? Should we wait for the presentation?
Hi, Sandy. I'm actually happy to speak to that. I'm Jennifer Santinez, DOT. As some of you may already be aware, DOT has been coordinating with the elected offices on additional bike lanes in the East Village to not only help mitigate the cyclist rerouting during construction, but to just also further enhance the bike network across the city. So our plan is to return to the community with our findings in the coming months to discuss our plans for adding additional bike lanes here. Throughout the pandemic and the city's recovery over the last few months, we've seen an uptick in people just getting around by bike, and our proposal will help to address the increased ridership and growing demand for more bike facilities.
Okay. We also have a very specific question for Solar One. That the blacktop area where the building currently is not shown on your map, on the phasing map. And when currently the building is on hold, as are many of the projects at DDC. And what is the plan if the new solar building gets built after the ESCR construction begins? Does that affect the timeline? And there are also funds committed from the ESCR budget toward the building construction. What happens to the project budget if the ESCR goes forward with but the building is still on hold?
Yeah, so I can answer a piece of that relates to our construction time frame and operations, and our EDC colleagues feel free to jump in afterwards to cover the rest of that. So our plan right now, and I guess it's falling behind this sort of black banner where it says summer and fall. We'll address that next time. Apologies for that, but our plan is to have, Astor Levy Park and the area surrounding Solar One are up first up on our sort of construction steps and phasing plan. And what that means for Solar One is the area around Solar One building will be fenced off so the contractor can get started on the flood wall of that specific piece of the cycle park and right behind the building, Solar One building. With, of course, the commitment and obviously keeping the access to the building for building occupants open at all times. So what that, and this was tightly coordinated with EDC, with Solar One folks, within our agency and our consultants. What that allows us to do is to get in and out as I suppose quickly as possible to get this piece of the flood wall built, so that area, we are out of that area and it's ready for Solar One's project to come in after that, or whenever they're ready to come.
Yeah, that's right. We allow the contractor to get in there right at notice to proceed to build the flood wall, so we're out within a year and finish the flood wall so that it won't interfere with the construction of what's on hold now, but a new Solar One or Solar Two building.
And I guess that's the concern. How does this work if the city does not go forward with the design of Solar 2 pretty quickly?
Yeah, hey, this is Will Fisher from EDC. So good evening again, everybody. I was speaking earlier. So yeah, I think regarding Solar One, Solar One is a tenant of EDC's, and we have a really close relationship with them. Obviously, they provide a really critical forward-looking environmental education benefit to not only this community, but to the city as a whole. So, I think it's really important to us to make sure that we work closely with them. We've had several meetings. Actually, we've had many meetings over the last couple of years. We are working with them to design and construct, as folks mentioned, a new facility. And that project previously had a funding gap, which the city was able to fill through, recently through the as a commitment coming out of the ESCR ULURP negotiations. So we have a fully funded project, but I want to point folks back to what I was speaking about earlier in regard to certain projects being able to move forward and certain projects not being able to move forward yet from the city. So we have not yet, as EDC, who are designing and constructing the new building, we have not yet received authorization from OMB as much as we have pushed for the project to proceed. So we are, working with Solar One and have, are in the design process right now. But obviously that's a challenge there. So like Q and John said, I think we are coordinating tightly. The ESCR plans have always included the sort of space where the new Solar One building would go. So I think it's just a matter of ensuring, as I think we've coordinated to this point and will continue to do so, ensuring that there is the space left and potentially like the utility runs and potentially, a few other items that, can sort of be set up within the ESCR scope to accommodate the future building. So I would say, the conversations to this point that we've had, we're coordinating well and nothing is precluding the construction of the new Solar One building. So, obviously we're laser focused on trying to get that funding unlocked and move forward as soon as we can. But in the meantime, we're coordinating to make sure that, once we do have that go ahead, then things will be able to move seamlessly from there.
Thanks, Will. Okay, so if we want to move on to the next section of the presentation, that would be great. Just want to remind everybody that, or at least the presenting team, we're almost at 9 o'clock.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe Piccolo. I'm here with the Parks Department. I'm in the Planning Division. Thanks for having us. I'll keep it brief. I know we're running late. Only a few slides here. So yeah, if we can go to the next one. So just a quick update on the new turf site. So I know this was one of the CB6 mitigations that really impacts your area. So as Will and others have said kind of throughout the evening, there have been some procurement hurdles. However, we think that we'll be able to get these completed by the end of spring 2021, I'm sorry, we are past spring 2020, spring 2021. And so the 3 fields remaining that we have left to do are Robert Moses, St. Barton's, and Peters Field. You can go to the next slide, please. And so Waterside Pier, I know that quite a few folks have been curious about this one. Again, we are impacted by OMB restrictions and the city's fiscal climate currently. However, we are working to kind of use all of the in-house resources that we can to get the most done that we can. So we're still going to be able to do a number of improvements. However, there may be some items that we've shown in the past that might not be able to come to fruition, but we do anticipate that we'll be able to do something pretty nice here, and we're still really excited about it. And so for this one, we hope that we'll be able to get this done by the end of summer 2021. Again, here, things to kind of note is that OMB approvals for items, even if you have the funding in your budget, sometimes items don't get approved, especially right now. So we're working through that. And the other piece to consider as well is staffing. As many probably are aware, Parks is fairly understaffed right now. But we're gonna work really hard to get this for you by end of summer 2021. Next slide, please. And lastly, for the updates on the mitigations in CB6, we have some upcoming tree plantings. I believe approximately 60 trees planned for fall 2020. So those will be upcoming soon as well. And that's it. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much, Zoe. Thank you for providing updates on the Waterside Pier. That's been a very big interest for us in this community. You might even find a few community members there from time to time. It really has been a success. One of the bright spots of the last 6 or 7 months. It's gotten consistent heavy usage. Just with what's there. And it's really been a tremendous asset for the community. So any sort of improvements that you guys can bring to this would be welcomed and are much needed, specifically for our community that, is lacking of space. That said, is there anything specifically that, that this board can do in terms of helping to advocate for specific improvements or anything of that nature, be it like resolutions or to partner with a Partnership for Parks or something of that nature?
That's a really good question. Let me think on that, and I can definitely let you know and talk to a few folks. I'm sure that there is some sort of help that could be provided here. I think that I'm glad that we are able to do some of the
Us too.
improvements we brought to you guys. Yeah, no, this was, to be quite honest, this was a project that I was really excited about, and it was gearing up right before COVID. And then, as everyone knows, many things have happened since then. So yeah, glad that we're able to bring something out here and really looking forward to it.
Wonderful, thank you. Anne, floor is yours.
You know, Adam, you kind of asked like my first question, which was if there was anything we could do, you know, to help support this and kind of move it along. The other question I had was about what the trees are likely to be. I know it seems very trivial, but a tree came down recently in Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. When I spoke to the Parks Department person, I was saying, like, you know, what are you going to replace it with? And I put in a plug for native trees, as I always do, and especially ones that are you know, native wildlife friendly. And she said, you know what, we really don't know, because we're taking into effect climate change, and so we want plants, you know, we want to put in trees that are going to be good. And I know this was an issue here because we were looking at plants that would be more salt tolerant and, you know, drought tolerant, all kinds of things. So I'm just wondering kind of what you are incorporating into your thinking about the specific trees that are going to go in there.
So just to clarify, were you asking about trees on Waterside Pier or tree planting in CB6?
I'm asking specifically about on the pier here.
Great. So actually, we're not planting any trees here. These will all be surface treatments. In order to put planting here, we would really have to dig up on the pier, and we're not able to do a capital project. But we are going to bring in synthetic turf, so that'll kind of give a little bit of respite and places for people to relax. But we aren't able to bring in trees to the pier, unfortunately. We also don't.
Sorry, I'll have to look back at this. But I thought when we had been talking about, you know, there was not a lot of money for this, you know, working on this. But I really, other committee members tell me if I'm crazy, but I know budgets have changed and times have changed, but I really thought there were some planting areas.
So unfortunately, there weren't any planting areas because we don't have the utilities out here. So
water was the issue, right?
I'm sorry?
Water was the issue, getting water.
Yeah,
correct.
You know, I may be conflating this because we were talking about moving some of the Solar One plantings up here during the ESCR reconstruction. And so there was thoughts about how we could bring water in to support that.
Yeah, that was something that, hi, this is Sarah from Parks. That was something that was briefly under discussion, but I think that the difficulty in bringing in the water with all of the other site constraints and now with the budget, it's not something that we're able to pursue right now. So could be something we could look at in the future, but as of now, it's not part of the plan for next summer.
Well, clearly this is not something I will let go. So I'll remind you of this in a few years when we hopefully are in a better budget position.
That sounds great. You're on. Okay.
And Sarah, my understanding is we do have water in Glick Park now. Is that correct?
I think Zoe, Zoe had looked into this. Go ahead, Zoe.
Yeah, there's a hydrant that runs out to Glick. However, to bring the water out to Waterside is an extra effort. It's quite a bit further down. As you probably all know, it's a very long pier. So it's challenging to bring the water out to Waterside without doing a major capital project there.
We were actually told that there are 2 new water boxes that were installed at Glick.
So Glick is a little bit further south. So to bring the water up to Waterside, they would have to kind of dig up at the pier, and it would unfortunately be a bit costly.
But is that the case? There are 2 new water boxes at Glick?
I can look into that. I don't have that information on hand, but I can check.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else from anybody else in the committee? Okay. Seeing none. All right. Thank you, Zoe and Sarah. It's always a pleasure for you guys to join. Before we sort of move on into the final stages of this meeting, we know that the executive director of Solar One did have some comments in the Q&A function, and so he's been in touch with our board office and with in sort of coordinating and to see that that Solar One that is incorporated to the larger ESCR project. And so we'd like for the ESCR team or ESCR team to be in contact with Chris. If there's something that our office can do to help facilitate that, we'd like to do that. So.
Yeah, Adam, this is Q again. Will and I will take that back with our teams and reach back out. And Chris will somebody from one of our camps will definitely follow up with you. Apologies for that.
Wonderful. Excellent. All right. I know it's been a very long night, and thank you very much for your patience, the entire team. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for the updates. We look forward to hearing more in the not too distant future. So thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
And so with that, my chair's report is going to be brief. Thank you all very much for your patience and for the sort of marathon meeting. I know we had a lot to cover. It's been a hell of a ride for the last 6 or 7 months, and there are definitely some bright spots. It's great to see you all again virtually, and to talk about some of our some interesting projects and updates. And I think there's a lot of good that's happening in this community, in spite of some of the less good things to dance around the subject and what's going on in the world and specifically in the city right now. So thank you for your dedication to this board, and thank you for all the work that you've put in outside of this meeting. But thank you mostly for attending. And so I'm hoping that for next month we can do sort of a broader sort of update in some of our waterfront issues, kind of what we've more or less addressed tonight. So specifically more specific mitigation items and things of that nature, and also to just kind of get a general update of what's going on in the district. It's again, we're in month 6, 7, and who knows what's going to happen next month, next week, whatever. And long range planning is one of the functions of this committee, and so kind of understanding the horizon of what's going on here in terms of our built environment and planning is always a good thing. So with that, is there any old business? Okay. Going once, going twice. Any new business? All right. With that said, thanks again. Thank you a million. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. All right. Thank you all. See you around.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.